by my cat. So hopefully you have some tolerance for him being in the picture and trying to get situated while I do this live. Um, Today I wanted to write a blog. Normally, every Monday and Tuesday, I work on writing and editing a blog on creators of New Earth, and and then I publish it on Wednesdays. And woke up today and I wasn't feeling particularly well. I had some nausea that took a while to go away, and I'm having some pretty intense low back pain on the right side. And something is going on with my Achilles tendon on the left side. And so I can get into that later. But I was thinking today, so I will be posting this on my blog instead of writing this week. But I was also thinking how, so I've done some Facebook lives, um, but that are solo, you know, and but on this channel so far, I have interviewed other people, but I haven't done any solos, and it takes, a lot of bravery for people to come on the show, and so I thought to myself, well, why don't I just do a solo? I started to do some solo Facebook lives before I left Santa Fe, and I've done a few since I've been here in Oregon. But I think I would like to start doing them on this channel occasionally. And so I don't have a particular subject. Um, well, I do. My title says Vulnerability, Wholeness, Facing Fear, and the Spiritual Path. So, um, lately I've been working with, this may sound out there, and that's okay if you, I don't expect anybody to understand or be able to relate, but it is what I want to convey. So I'm just going to take a crack at it. So within each of our cells, we have 6 feet of DNA, and we have trillions of cells. And we have so much DNA, in fact, that if we strung our DNA, um, just we could just put it all together and lay it out, it would be long enough to uh, travel from Earth to the sun and back 6 times. That's a lot of information. We carry a lot of information, and um, you hear people talk about the Akashic records, and you know the Akashic records are similar to a cloud where you store information. And in the Akashic records is everything that's ever happened since beginningless time, like uh, everything that's happened with humanity, everything that's happened with the earth, everything that's happened with individuals. And we also have our own Akashic record. That Akashic record, I believe, is held within the DNA. So hopefully I haven't lost you. Bear with me. So many people are aware that they can work with their own DNA. And I wasn't aware of this until a couple of years ago. And, lots of people, uh, um, how can we say, we've either had traumatic experiences or we come through with past life memories, traumas that have bled through and affect our behaviors and patterns in this lifetime. And then we've had traumas that have happened in this lifetime that affect our behaviors and patterns. and our physical body and our emotional body and our mental body and all of these things. And um, often people who are on a spiritual path um, are working to transform these things. And it's not to say that people who don't work on those things aren't quote unquote spiritual, right? But it's a common theme with people who are on a spiritual path. And naturally, there's people who have traumas of whatever flavor, and they are working through those. And whether they connect that to a spiritual path or not is not really important. That's their business, how they work with their trauma, how they transform it. um, some traumas, you know uh, you you may have had your whole life and you still haven't transformed it, or you may know other people who have had traumas that seem to be so heavily imprinted and heavily embedded in the physical body that they stay with a person for a whole life. So I believe also that in the DNA are all the if I talk about it, excuse me, something just happened. I don't know what it was. Sound like something fell. Anyway, so in our DNA is recorded all of the experiences of this lifetime, and um, and all of the experiences of our past lives as well. But not only that, we inherit DNA from our maternal and paternal bloodline, from our mother and father. And so I believe, and it's not, I wish I could find a word other than believe, because it's more than believe. I have seen it show up in my personal life. It's dictated a lot of my life, is the DNA that I inherited from my ancestors. And so I have the perception that I am here on a soul mission in this school called Earth. And I am here to work out whatever my own personal soul is working out. And I'm also here to transform and evolve the bloodlines from my um, mother and father, and my ancestors going back further than that, too. Um, I don't know how it works. Some people say that, you have certain soul contracts that you sign up for before you come to Earth. Um, and I would tend to side in agreement with that. Um, I have some pretty, we all do, but I'm just talking about me. So I'm not talking about me in comparison to anyone else. Just talking about me right now. And in my bloodline is some in my bloodlines is some pretty heavy stuff to transform. So on my mom's bloodline, my mother's paternal bloodline, there's a history of mental illness and suicide. And so my mom came in with that imprint. And when she was 30, her body chemistry started to become imbalanced. And she was diagnosed or given the label of bipolar. And she experienced um, depression, long term depression, sometimes mania. Um, while this was happening, I was not in her care. I was living with my father. So I had a childhood of going back and forth between my two parents. My mother lived in San Francisco, my dad lived on the Oregon coast. um, 2 miles north of where 2 hours north of where I'm living now. And so I lived these two lives, going back and forth between my parents. And then once my mom started to have some trouble, I stayed, primarily with my dad, visiting my mom on holidays and vacations and whatnot. So, in any case, if I'm referring to transforming um, the bloodline, then I feel that some of my work is to transform that polarity, bipolar, that polarity in my mom's paternal bloodline, in my maternal bloodline. And then my father, who's not on the planet anymore, he very unfortunately was molested by his own uncle when he was 5 years old. And it's a long story how I discovered this. But my dad um, was so traumatized by that experience that he um, pretty much blocked that out for the whole of his life. Um, and finding out that piece of information um, gave me a lot of insight into my dad's own mental health and um, lifelong battle with depression. And sometimes he could have a very uh, controlling nature. And I mean, it's not lost on me. And I was hearing there's a man I really like. I was introduced to him through Sology, and he and his wife Kirsty Lee are interviewed a lot on Sology, both individually and together. And they are very sane, healthy people who have done a lot of work on themselves and also as a couple. And I was listening to James last night, and he was talking about how control, and it's not a new idea, but it just came to me in this moment through him, what he was saying last night, that, our need to control everything around us is a need to feel safe ultimately. And obviously, when you have a huge breach of trust like that and you're molested, and my dad was 77 when he died, so, and that's been 3 years ago, so 80 years ago, so 80 years ago he was born, so 5 years, okay, so 75 years ago, like, where did somebody go to tell somebody that they had been molested? I mean, where does somebody even go in modern times? Um, Lots of times children don't talk about these things, or if they do, they're invalidated by the parent, or they're told it didn't happen, or whatever. So I don't know what my dad's case was. I just know that he blocked it out for most of his life, and experience, and as a result of not having healed that trauma in his body, that it in turn affected his psyche. And in order to feel safe, he often became very controlling. And it affected his romantic relationships, and it affected his relationship with his son, and his relationship with me, and his relationship with his stepchildren. And yeah, it was tragic. I always wondered, what would my dad's life have looked like um, had that never happened, because, in nature, I mean, you talk to people who didn't see that side of him and don't know that side of him and didn't know that he had that he carried that trauma. And they'll say he was one of the nicest, sweetest, kindest guys I ever met. He's very helpful. He had a lot of integrity. Um, if you ever loaned him something, it would come back in, perfect or better condition than when he borrowed it. That he was always kind and willing to lend a hand, and he was definitely very generous. So, um, we are, in our essential nature, we are um, who we truly are, and we're whole, and we're perfect just as we are. And then life happens, and we're born, and we have these family patterns to contend with, and genetics and epigenetics, if you know that word. Um, so, epigenetics are the things that we um, inherit through our bloodlines, and that doesn't just mean like a predilection towards certain illnesses or whatever. It can even be um, habit patterns or mental states like anxiety or depression or whatever. And so, I often wondered, like, wow, what would my dad's life have looked like if he didn't have that trauma? And what I saw in my dad is that as he got older, so if I review his life, what it looks like to me when a trauma is left lodged in the body and the psyche and not dealt with is that it's still there. It doesn't go anywhere. And then it affects all of your relationships, and not in positive ways. And the knock on your door by this trauma gets louder and louder and louder. And if you don't even know what the trauma is because you've blocked it out, um, then you don't have access to your trauma, and therefore, how can you do anything about it? And my dad's last years of his life were the most traumatic, I would say. It's like that trauma just, festered, and his mind went south, and his body went south. And boy, okay, so this is the first time that it's ever happened to me that I have to take a break in the middle of a live. So I am going to ask, uh, because I can't pause this without starting a new stream. So I'm going to say that I will be back in 1 minute. So if someone's joining right now, they'll wonder why there is a blank screen. But anyway, if you could give me 1 second, I'll be back in about 60 seconds. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you for that. Um, so where was I? We're talking about my dad and trauma. So so here I am, I'm in Earth School, as this person who calls herself truly Persian. And I have my own individual soul's journey. And part of that journey that I've taken on um, is to uh, transform the things that I inherited through my bloodline. And it's a tall order. And you think about, like, I don't know how many of you have had a close relationship with your grandparents or your great grandparents, or know stories. But, I mean, if you're European, there's somewhere in your bloodline, there's an ancestor who left their country to come to the United States to forge what they thought would be a better life. And that presented its own struggles. So I know on my mom's side, My great grandfather, Ernesto Catalano, he was born in Sicily. His family fled Sicily um, because of a murder that had happened. And so there was some trauma there. I know he'd always wished that he could return to Italy, but he never did. He married my grandmother, and they had my mother and my aunt, and he, put himself through school. Um, he went to Stanford. He later ended up teaching at Stanford, and et cetera, et cetera. Why am I talking about him? Well, that's another thing. So I guess what I'm talking about is you have all of the, they're not stories, they're life experiences. So all of those life experiences, like, the murder in my grandfather's bloodline, and the trauma of having to leave a country and always being homesick for your country. Um, my great grandmother was also an immigrant from Italy. Um, my grandmother had her own story of outliving her two children, and on and on and on. I'm also aware that I have a relative who was a scout on the first wagon train to Oregon. So, these stories, um, they are they are there in us, and we have a connection to our ancestors, whether we cultivate that or not, or whether we choose to work with these bloodlines to um, transform the trauma, or the things that didn't work out so well, or the habit patterns, or the mental habits that carry from, you know, generation to generation, is really up to us. And it's no small task. And um, yeah, and I'm still working on it. So, in my dad's relationship with depression, I would say his depression was um, environmental or situational. Um, I don't feel he was born with an imbalanced body chemistry, but I feel that the trauma that happened, that was lodged in his body, did create a chemical imbalance. And in the case of my mother, I believe she inherited some imbalanced body chemistry. So with me, um, I I know, well, everyone as a teenager, you're dealing with hormones, right? So um, I think definitely as a teenager, I had some depression, and it could have been partially inherited body chemistry. It could have been because I was playing with my own body chemistry. I my at the end of my sophomore year, or beginning of my junior year, I started smoking pot, and I started drinking, and um, then at some point I started taking birth control pills because I became sexually active quite young, and I didn't want to be pregnant in high school. I didn't want to have a child. Um, so I think between, smoking pot and drinking, and having the hormones of a teenager, and being on birth control pills, my body chemistry was definitely compromised. Um, so then in my 20s, I may have, I don't have any real, like, vivid memories of being depressed in my 20s, but I know that I did go through some rough times. And when I was 19, my mother took her own life. Um, and so that, that definitely left some scar tissue that would have to be transformed. And then when I was 33, I experienced the most severe depression. Well, it was my first bout with that grade of deep depression. I literally did not want to be here. And I was studying Buddhism at the time, and the concept was taught to me that if you take your own life, it's kind of like, it doesn't sit well with your soul. It's not about being, punished by any outside force, but that it doesn't sit right with your soul. And so you have to go through a process to untangle yourself from um, having taken your own life. In other words, you're kind of adding a problem on top of an initial problem, and that it doesn't really solve anything. And and I didn't believe it would solve anything. And so I thought, well, as hard as life felt and as wonky as my body chemistry felt, um, I would decide to forge ahead. And so I did. And at that time, when I was feeling suicidal, I um, I had a friend, and we had been studying and practicing Buddhism together, and she was a practitioner of Chinese medicine, and she offered me some treatments for free, and um, she got me on a herbal protocol, and it pulled me right out of my depression, and I was so taken that that was even possible, that you could help somebody turn the boat around from feeling suicidal to having a new lease on life. So, um, before that, I believe that part of the reason that I was feeling so depressed, excuse me, I need some water, is because I was kind of like a rudderless boat. So I was cleaning houses for a living. I started doing it with somebody else, and then they got out of that business and gave me some of their accounts, and I started my own business, and I started house cleaning, and I was living a very simple life. Like, I just had a bike. I didn't even have a car, which was great for my health. Um, I would ride it whether it was snowing or raining or hot outside. And I was living in Ashland, Oregon, which is very hilly. And so I was really getting my exercise, and it was good for me. So that time in my life, well, it's not to say that it was always easier, that there were no struggles. Um, there was someone who I was kind of in a holding pattern with, in a relationship, and my heart, you know, um, longed to be with this person, and we were together, and then we were apart, and then we kind of did that together apart thing for some years. Um, but nonetheless, I at the time that I had that bout of depression, I wasn't really, I wasn't in a committed relationship with anybody. I was cleaning houses, um, and my life was very simple. And in some ways, that's good. I had lots of time to, you know, do some soul searching, and go on retreats, and study Buddhism, and look at my spirituality, and why I was here on earth and what I was doing and all that. But nevertheless, I end up in this really depressed state. So going back to the rudderlessness and the simple life, is that I believe, it's like part of us, as humans, it's like I think we would love if everything could just be smooth all the time. Like we didn't have relationship problems, we didn't have to worry about money, we didn't have things there that were challenging us. Like we'd like to be on cruise control. And I've even heard it said that people who have, like, you look at them and it looks like their life is really really easy, like they never really had relationship problems, they never really had money problems, they never really had too many struggles. Some people, I've heard a term called resting life, meaning that they may have had former lives where they were very challenged and had to jump through a lot of hoops and do a lot of work, and so in this life they're kind of taking it easy or taking a break. um, if I ever reincarnate as a human, I would like a resting life. But, anyways, I'm kind of blurry because of the sliding, so thanks for hanging in there with me. So, I am here to posit a theory that a little bit of tension is good, like a little bit of challenge. I'll come back to the rudderlessness and the tension, but um, so I have a friend from when I was very young, maybe 18. And he's been married now for 27 years. And they were here recently and we all went out to dinner. And I was talking to them about their relationship. And I asked them what they feel makes it work. And they said it was to allow the other person to be exactly who they are. And so one of the things, part of that agreement meant that the husband, my friend's wife, I mean, yeah, my friend himself, um, he, his wife loves to uh, travel, and she travels quite frequently. And he said during dinner, well, sometimes I wish she would stay at home, more, um, meaning not travel. And of course, he's always invited to go with her anywhere that she goes, but he doesn't like to travel as often. So you see how that can create a bit of tension, like not tension as in a problem, but it's like, oh, he would like her to be there more often, but she's not. And yeah, he's welcome to go with her, but probably what he would like is for them to spend more time in their home in that location together, right? And so there's this bit of tension, but it's probably part of what makes their relationship work. So in any case, mm, in my life I didn't really have any tension because I wasn't pushing myself. I was just doing something that was easy. I mean, it's not easy physically, but you know house cleaning is not rocket science. And so I was just living this very simple life. I didn't have any relationship challenges. I didn't really have any financial hardship. Um, and I wasn't pushing my boundaries, but I also didn't know like what I wanted. Like, you know, um, I I was just doing that because I didn't have any bigger dreams for myself. And so one by one, each of the people who I started to clean for, and they didn't even all know each other, and they start coming forth to me and saying, you do a really good job cleaning my house. Um, and there's nothing wrong with cleaning houses, but I just feel like you could be like they saw me as brilliant and intelligent or talented or having a lot of potential, and they didn't feel like me, and I would agree, cleaning houses was utilizing my full potential. And this was right around the time that I started to go into a really deep depression. And so, um as I said, after I got out of my depression, I realized I wanted to study Chinese medicine, right? So I did. I went to Santa Fe and I studied Chinese medicine, and I became what's called a doctor of Oriental medicine. That's what they call them in New Mexico. Uh, an acupuncturist, basically. Licensed acupuncturist and herbologist is what most states give the title to. Um, my cat is in the bathroom, up on the counter, meowing about something. I don't know what. I just gave him some dinner. And he has water, so I'm not sure what he wants. But I can't stop the live to go help him. Jake, come up here and sit on my lap. So, studying Chinese medicine was very challenging. It's because I was basically in medical school, but to study Eastern medicine rather than Western. And it was very challenging, very, very challenging. And but now there was some healthy tension in my life too, right? And there was a direction. Like I wasn't just rudderless anymore, and I was pushing my boundaries, and I was learning, and I was acquiring new skills. And um and long story short, Jay, why don't you come up here? Long story short, uh I did that for about 12 years, and then it was just waning. It was like whatever I tried to do to make that career go, it didn't matter what door I opened, what door I knocked on, how I tried to make it work. Uh it didn't. And so I took it as a sign, like, okay, this chapter is closed. All the doors are closed. But I was very disappointed. And I always felt, I don't anymore, but I felt it was something that I did or didn't do, or I had done something wrong, or it was my fault. And, sometimes, whether it's a relationship or a career or a chapter of our life, it comes to a close. Everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It just means that the energy and momentum behind whatever that experience was is now complete. It's done. And um, kind of like a person, right? It's like when they pass away, you can't just like go find life force and put it in their body and make their life keep happening. It's done. So, I had done retail in my life, and I had done house cleaning. And I didn't know what else to do at the time, and I didn't have any ideas of entrepreneurship or anything. So I went back to cleaning houses. And it wasn't fulfilling me. And I was feeling like Santa Fe was sort of pushing me out of the nest. Like I had just become too comfortable there. And I was just kind of going through the motions of life and not challenging myself. Of course, this whole time I was studying with a mentor, a man named Kevin Snow, and, doing the inner work. And, um, that's been a common thread through my whole life. So I was doing that. But, I felt too stagnant, and I felt like I needed to make a big change. So I came to where I am now. And now I am a live in caretaker for a man who is 84 years old, who is somebody who was friends with my family when I was growing up in Cannon Beach, Oregon, on the coast, 2 hours north of here. And I went to high school with his sons, and his son uh, was the driver of a car that I was in when I got into a car accident that almost took my life when I was a sophomore in high school in 1983. So Brian knew that I was striving to make some sort of change or get out of Santa Fe and set my life in a different direction. And he asked if I would want to come caretake for his dad. And so I said yes. And I'm not going to go into it, a lot of the details, because there are many, about this job or what it was like when I arrived and all I had to do to make the house have habitable and hygienic and livable, etc. And that in itself was depressing. But anyway, if you are interested more in learning more about my caretaker job, if you go to creatorsofnewearth.com, I have a blog there, and I I wrote two blogs about it, called "So You Want to Be a Caretaker," Part One and Part Two. So here I am. I've been doing this job for 10 months now, maybe going, well, in March it'll be a year. So I arrived here March 2nd of 2022. So it's growing me. It has its challenges. There's definitely tension. There's some, you know, health issues. And I am, here to take care of this person so that those health issues don't become dire. It's not somebody who can live alone anymore and take care of themselves. So, um, so I'm here doing that. But my plan before I got here was um, to to I can tell I'm gonna have to wrap this up. Okay, maybe not. Jay, why don't you come sit here? Come sit here, Jay. My cat really wants some attention, but I don't want to finish this live just yet. Okay. Jay, come up here and I'll pet you, okay? Come on. So many things tugging on us in our life, huh? So I came here, and my initial plan was to be here for 6 months. My brother had the idea that he wanted to buy a piece of property in a foreign country, and I was going to go manage that. It was going to be like something like an Airbnb or bed and breakfast or whatever. So in my head, I was coming here for 6 months, and then I was going to go to a foreign country with my cat and run an Airbnb. Well, long story short, that didn't pan out. So now here I am. I'm still here. And um, a couple of projects that I'd wanted to do for a couple of years was this: to have a live stream, and to have a blog, and to have a Facebook channel, and also start a t-shirt company, like on an Etsy platform or something like that. And all of these things were meant to be for my pleasure and creativity, but also uh, streams of income. Like I wanted to monetize each of these things. Well, that hasn't happened, and I'm not on here to make money, but I also was hoping that eventually, if I got a broad enough audience and enough views, that could potentially be some income, along with the writing the blog and the t-shirts and doing lives on Facebook and whatnot. So long story short, none of that panned out either. And so um then the okay so let's see, we're talking about having enough tension in your life that you're moving yourself forward, you're not staying too complacent or too stagnant. And we're also talking about um, healing and transforming our traumas, and transforming our maternal and paternal bloodlines, and then our own soul's mission here on Earth School. And so I'm trying to tie this all together. So I mentioned earlier that I learned that you could start working with your DNA. And so if you're just jumping on earlier, I was talking about the Akash and how it's like the cloud that stores information, and that I believe that our personal Akash is in our DNA. That's where we can access, stories of our bloodlines, um, stories of ourselves from past lives, etc. And so part of the task that I've taken on for myself to uh, evolve my soul um, is to clean up these bloodlines and um, and work through blockages that I have in myself, fears or blockages in various chakras or whatever. So currently, I'm working on a particular strand of DNA that is definitely multifaceted. It has to do with regeneration, and it has to do with rebuilding. Um, but I don't want to. Um, when I think of building something from the ground up, I don't think of building on top of something old. So, whatever it is that I'm still needing to transform, like the blockages in my first and second chakra, and the things in my ancestral bloodline that are really heavy second chakra stuff, I am in the process of transforming and transmuting those things, right? And it's a big undertaking, and it has to do a lot with trust and dedication and just keeping going, diligence, I guess you would call that. And it has a lot to do with imagination. It's like, okay, well, how do I do this? Sometimes I have someone I talk to, and her name is Anna, and I identify her as being the grandmother of Jesus. Um, Sometimes I contemplate things on my own. Sometimes I discuss things with my mentors. Sometimes I discuss things with my mom and my dad, who are no longer in their bodies. So, but so imagination, like I said, and creativity is a huge part of it. But it's still a tall order, and I'm not on the other side of it. And I've been living in Santa Fe. uh I was living in Santa Fe for 18 years, and it's sunny most of the time there. And here we've had, like, you know rain for so long. I mean, you might have a day without it, or a patch without it where it's sunny. But I will tell you, a seasonal affective disorder is real. And it's not a disorder, it's depression, it's biochemistry, it's hormones, because you're not getting enough sunlight. And so, I've had a low grade depression recently. And, you know, every time I would say I am free from depression more than I have depression, right? And I can go through years without having it at all. But when I go through years of not having it at all, I tend to think, oh, I'm done with that pattern. Like, I cleared it, I transformed it. I'm no longer going to experience that anymore. And so when I get here, I feel like, oh God, here I am. I'm in this pattern again. Am I ever going to get out of this? And then today I've had really extreme low back pain, which I've only had low back pain like this. I can count on on one hand how many times that's happened. And it's like it's the right side, so the masculine, and it's low back pain is usually like lack of support. And then my Achilles tendon on my left side, which is the feminine side, having to do with like moving forward, walking, being able to take steps. So there's something going on with the masculine and feminine right now. Um, and then I have a friend who helped me start all my projects, and her name is Ether Candace, and she's also a writer on Substack like I am. And she's had to well, I don't know. Do I divulge her information on here? Well, she divulged herself in the article, so I guess that's safe. She has battled with depression in her life too, and she just wrote an article. Which, once this goes up on my YouTube channel, I will include the article, and when I post this in my blog, I'll also include a link to the article. And so that's what really got me thinking about this, is like, long-term patterns and transforming things, and people who've had to deal with suicidal attempts or suicidal ideation, or transforming bloodlines, transforming, yeah, patterns in our bloodlines. These are all the things that have been on my mind lately, and it's also been on my mind, like, microbiome. So the microbiome is all of the germs and viruses and fungi and bacteria that exist in any environment, whether we're talking about the ground floor of the forest or our own um, gut, and besides the marrow of our bones, uh, like inside your intestinal walls, that's like the furthest inward you can really go physically, and our intestines are our immunity. And there's also um, a gut brain connection, right? And so I had been writing some blogs. For 3 weeks I wrote about genetically modified food, and then this week I was going to write about nutrition, but I'm doing this video instead. And so, and the person hi, Che, come over here and get a pet. Oh, come on. He has intestinal stuff. And what I've been dealing with is first and second chakra stuff, and I've been having issues in those part of my body come up too. And then I read about my astrology for this year, and it says I could run into some intestinal stuff. So it's not like I am, you know, reading that and then recreating it in my mind, but I'm thinking, oh, if that's a possible something that could come up this year, maybe I should start, really looking at my gut health, and is it optimal? And I eat very well and stay hydrated and all of those things, but I've been looking at taking it up a notch and establishing a deeper connection with my body through the intestine at this time. And the intestines are also the more esoteric component. The physical component is digestion, right? But the more esoteric component of intestines is the subconscious. And that's where a lot of our work lies, right? Working with the subconscious, making it conscious. Carl Jung says, um, until you make the unconscious conscious, it shall rule your life. It shall rule your life, and you will call it fate. So I go outside every morning and I take my shoes and socks off, and there's a nice bed of pine needles out there, and I put my feet on the ground to connect with the microbiome so that can inform my own microbiome. And then sometimes I walk around like in the wet grass, same thing, connecting to the earth, grounding, communicating with the microbiome. And then my mentor said to me recently, he said, start contemplating because everything, you and I, the earth, the microbiome itself, everything is emptiness and form. All form comes from emptiness. So there is a component of the earth that is matter, and there is a component of earth that has no matter, just like you and me, and same with the microbiome. So I've been contemplating lately, like what is that field of energy that's a microbiome before it becomes physicality, and how does that inform my physical microbiome in my gut? So I can't say that I have a lot of wisdom around that yet, or have had any great epiphanies, but I think it's a good one to play around with if that's something that interests you. And then I was gonna write that article on nutrition, and so I started, looking at the gut and microbiome, and then I got turned on to Zach Bush during COVID, because he had so many sane things to say, and he's an MD, so he knows his way really around the body very well. But he's also a very spiritual person, and he looks into the deeper meanings of things. And he has a website, and he sells a product for your gut called Ion something. He sells like a bundle. It's like something for your sinuses, because that's sort of we think of the mouth as the beginning of the digestive tract, but really it's the nose, right? That's filtering out, toxins and polluted air and whatever from our body. And so he has something for the nose and something for skin and something for the gut. Well, I've been looking at humic and fulvic acids recently. And actually, Zach is not a proponent of probiotics because he said that's too like monoculture. You're just putting one type of probiotic in your body and populating your gut with that. And he said that if you put the right ingredients in your body, like these fulvic and humic acids, and your lining of your intestines is strong, and you have the ingredients, these fulvic and humic acids, your body will produce its own probiotics, right? And that they will be um, a stronger line of defense for immunity, and that it does have cognitive effects also, but that they're organic, they're produced by your body. You're not putting probiotics in your body, you're putting precursors to probiotics. And because of that, your own body can make a diversified um, uh, microbiome and produce its own probiotics. So for me, there's um, it's way beyond physical. I mean, for me, that's really a metaphysical thing that I want to start contemplating and working with. And what situation am I creating in my gut? Because it is tied to my subconscious, and it is tied to my mental health as well. And so I just wanted to put that out there in case anybody else finds it interesting. I also, I, I will. Okay, so when I get off of here, which is going to be soon, because I need to go to the ladies' room, but I'm also going to post an article in the comments below and on my blog, uh, a link to an article about fulvic acid, because fulvic acid is amazing. Remember, I was talking about the things being material and immaterial at the same time. Um, Fulvic acid is a bit of a kind of quantum physics acrobat. And I can't really go into the details of that now. It's in the article, and they're more eloquent in talking about it anyway. So anyway, I hope you will look into fulvic and humic acids. I wanted to share about my life path and facing my fears and working towards wholeness, not just happiness, but wholeness, um, feeling complete, we can tend to think, oh, there's something wrong with me, and oh, I have to do all these things. And, well, if something doesn't sit right, it's going to knock on your door. And then you get to decide how you want to work with that. When does it show up? How does it show up? What are the tools that you have to work with it? What are you transforming? Is it personal to you? Is it coming through a bloodline? um there's a lot. If you didn't watch the whole thing, you can go back to the beginning if it interests you. But I'm always just rolling up my sleeves and digging in the dirt and saying, what can I do here to feel more safe, to feel like I'm accessing my full potential, to um to honor being embodied in a physical body, to honor my spirit, to honor my soul, and to honor my ancestral bloodlines. And how can I, in being vulnerable and transparent and open about my process, does that help anyone? I don't know, but I I have faith that it can. And so that's why I sit here alone on my bed and talk to the audience, whether they're going to watch now or on the replay. I hope it will be of benefit. You know, if you are living on the planet in a human body right now, you've got something going on. Either maybe you're curious about how things are going to play out on the world stage, or you're curious about where your next meal is coming from, or how your relationship is going to work out, or maybe you're not happy with your career and you want to change it. Maybe you have some health issues you need to look at or want to look at. Maybe you want to look at how to start loving yourself more, working in the direction of unconditional self love. I certainly have not arrived, but I am taking steps to get there. And so, yeah, these are the things I write about. These are the things that I talk about when I interview other people on here. These are the things that are near and dear to my heart that I think about and journal about and write about and talk about. And so I hope something here has been of use to you. And thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. And thank you for sharing. If you feel inclined, you can share this. And I just turned the comments on and I see that Claudia tuned in. So, Claudia, if you're still out there, thank you so much for watching. And even if you're not still out there, thank you so much for watching. Okay, much love to everybody who is watching now or on the replay, and we will see you soon. I am going to click end the stream and see what my cat wants and give my bladder a break. Okay, much love.